Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you know what we're doing here. The talks that are given are put on YouTube. So if you don't know how to get on YouTube, you just ask your kids. They'll know how to do it. So we have when we started recording talks, a long time ago really, somebody said we ought to record the talks that I give. We have like 190, and they're slowly being put up. We had to get somebody new right there to handle our website because it just kept getting more and more difficult. The people would come in and it was almost a nightmare. And we lost a lot of stuff, but it's pretty well on track. And then here a few years ago, somebody donated a camera, and she said, she's one of our board members, and she said, oh, I think we ought to just do videos. So the videos are on there, they're about half an hour, and most of them are me talking. The audio ones, we had monks that were with us before. A couple of them have passed away, but their talks are still there. And Tikton Mum, he gives a talk once a month now. I bend his arm and then, twist it, and he gets and comes and gives a talk. And full men this spring, we will be giving him his full ordination. He'll get a yellow robe, and then he has to talk. He's pretty comfortable with that though, because he worked in advertising, writing, so it's very easy for him. There's many stories around Zen, and I haven't, for those of you that have been coming in the last few months, and it's been up and down because of the COVID. We closed for a while, then the governor said we could have services outside, so we moved chairs out on the patio, and then he said we could have it inside if we only had so many people, so then we spread the chairs out and we did that. And we're almost getting close to being back to normal. For the last few months, really maybe for the whole time of COVID, I've been talking about the original teachings of the Buddha. And I've stayed away from Zen stories. It's a real problem in America because American monks, most of them in a Japanese tradition, they don't teach the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path. Don't ask me why they don't teach that, because that was the basic, very first teaching of the Buddha. The first sermon he gave was about suffering and unhappiness, and that there was a solution to the problem, and the solution to the problem was to learn how not to be attached to things and not to be driven by desire. And it's very hard for people to understand, because in the West, for 100 years, there was a real misunderstanding about what Buddhism was. They thought that if you were a Buddhist, you didn't like anything. You didn't enjoy anything. I like some vanilla ice cream. Mom over here, our freezer is so full of ice cream right now because, oh, we're gonna have some ice cream. And the Buddha never said you couldn't like anything. That's Hindu. Hindu holy men, they learn not to like any food, not to like any girls, not to like any comfortable beds, and it goes on and on and on. And they think that if they do this, they will become closer to the gods, and they will have more control. believe it or not, you can actually have control over your desires without giving up ice cream. And so in America, most of the Zen centers, they tell stories about Zen. And I do that once in a while. I'm going to tell you a little story. Some of you have heard it. It's one of my favorite stories, and there's many out there. That's what made Zen possible. It made it popular in this country. You know, when people started practicing Zen, because they liked the little stories about the Zen master and the student. Well, there was a Zen master and a student, and they were traveling from one temple to another, which was very common in the old days. And the master had been a monk a long, long time. And he was basically a pretty happy person. And his student was learning how to be happy, because I keep telling people that Buddhism is about being happy. Other religions, they suffer. In some religions, they suffer terrible. I have a new doctor, I have to tell you. And the new doctor is from, where's he from, Mom? One of those.
Like the Middle East. Isn't he from, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
Not sure.
But it's one of the countries where everybody follows Islam.
Yes.
And he told me the first time I went there, he said, I used to be a Muslim. And he said, my son told me, he said, Dad, in Muslim, in our religion, Islam, if you're bad, they kill you. If you're a Christian, they pray for you. So he told me that because he said he converted to Christianity. He liked the idea of somebody praying for him better than somebody killing him. So kind of extreme. Some religions, particularly in their long history, have had a lot of violence, a lot of unhappiness, and a lot of misunderstanding. Almost all the religious leaders have taught like the Buddha, which was to be kind and compassionate and develop wisdom, and through the development of wisdom, you understand why. So this old monk and this young monk, they're traveling along, and the early monks, they always traveled from village to village, and they had rules about it. They could only stay in one place for 3 days, and then they had to move on. And they came up to a little stream, and it was a good place to camp. So they got their bedroll out, and they had a little food, and they got their food out, and they ate some of that. And while they're sitting there on the ground, eating this, along comes a monk, really fancy stuff. You know, we have a hat. Is that hat up here somewhere?
Yes, it is.
Hanging on the wall over there is a very fancy hat. And I've worn that hat one time in my life. And I just did it for a ceremony. And you know this hat. You see this all the time. Watung wear that hat. I've had that hat for 20 years. And I don't wear that hat. I wear this hat. You know? But I asked people in Taiwan asked me to pray for them. Because when the COVID started, everybody was angry if they were Chinese. Taiwan had nothing to do with COVID, nothing. But they came here, and I knew them, and they said, would you pray? And I said, absolutely. So, and would you record it? And I said, I can do that. And then we did a big ceremony, and we sent that back to Taiwan, and I wore that hat. Well, this monk shows up, he's on the road. There's no reason to wear a hat, not that hat. And he had the fancy robes on, and his disciple, oh, he was an important person. And they all settled down, 2 masters, 2 disciples, and the the disciple of the master with the hat said to the other one, "Your robes are very plain. Matter of fact, your robes are so plain that the master and the monk had the same robes." And people don't notice that about Zen. But I've been a monk going on 50 years, and he's been a monk going on, how many? 4. We wear the same robe. I saw in the newspaper yesterday there was a cardinal in there, a Catholic cardinal. Oh, he's got a fancy hat. And he got a big red robe and everything. But the only reason people would think that I might be the old guy is just because I'm old, you know? And so the monk came over and he said, your robe, not only is it not special, it's kind of old, kind of worn. And I see there, is that food? You have some stains? Yes, I will wash that when we get to the temple. And he said, well, my master, he doesn't allow us to wear those kind of robes. We wear the most beautiful robes. You notice my robe is silk. But we don't wear silk robes. I don't know, can you figure out why we don't wear silk robes? We can't take life. Every time you pull the silk loose from the cocoon, one of the silkworms dies. So China, Vietnam, we don't wear silk robes. Yeah. But the young monk said, look at my robe, it's so beautiful. Isn't this wonderful? And his master had a robe and it had dragons on it. Oh, I have a robe like that too. I wore it for that ceremony. One time. It's back in my closet, right, Mom?
Yes.
I told him he can have that robe when I die, then he can wear it. Because my disciple in Washington.
It'll fit me just fine.
So, that monk, he talked about everything and how special everything was. They had special shoes. And the first master, the poor master we'll call him, they didn't even have any shoes. They were barefoot. In the early days, the Buddha walked around barefoot all the time. Of course, it was pretty nice in India, you know, like San Diego. People say, what was India? San Diego. Oh, nice weather. And so, finally, the monk with the important master said, you know, I'm looking at your master and I look at you. And I think, oh, I'm so sorry for you. He says, you know, my master, he knows magic. And he can do all kinds of magic. He can make all kinds of important things happen. And, you know, he can, if somebody is bad, he can forgive them all their karma. If somebody only has a little food, he can make it a lot of food. And he went on and on. Miracles. He said, oh, this master is so important. And he finally said to the poor monk, he said, what can your master do? Tell me how important your master is. And he says, well, my master, when he's hungry, he eats. And my master, when he's tired, he lays down and he sleeps. And my master, when he needs to relieve himself, he goes behind the bush and he relieves himself. That's the magic my master does. And the young monk didn't understand at all, because he was very confused. And probably will be reborn at least 100,000 times. That's the basic story. There is no magic. There is no magic. There is what you believe. Whatever you believe is going to happen. If you believe things are going to be good, they're going to be good. If you think they're going to be bad, they will be bad. It is guaranteed. And the magic is in your mind. The reality you create there. We have I talk about this every week. We have a situation in this country that's terrible. Maybe in the whole world, but in this country, half the people hate the other half of the people. And the other half of the people that are hated hate that half. And they even have a name. The first half is called the Democrats and the second half is called the Republicans. And they hate each other. And it has not always been this way. Doesn't mean they ever agreed. If they all agreed, there'd be one party, one political party. But they don't like each other. And they don't like each other because of a label. It really doesn't have anything to do with what these people are doing, because they never listen. Neither side. There is no right side. Both sides are wrong. The minute you start to hate people, you're wrong, because nothing good can ever come of it. I have a good friend. I mention him every once in a while. And he was in the Vietnam War a long time ago. And he came home with only one leg. And he's gone back to Vietnam 3 times now to visit the places that he was there. And nobody hates each other. Now I have to tell you, in Vietnam, in Orange County, don't tell anybody you're a communist. You're in big trouble if you do that. It takes a long time to heal. But the soldiers in Vietnam have pretty much healed. They've forgiven each other. It was a war. It's over with. We were on one side. It was a civil war. Americans, for some reason, do not understand it was a civil war. You know, half the country wanted to do it one way, the other half wanted to do it another way. They couldn't agree. So they had a war. We had a war here. It was called the Civil War. And we pretend that nobody has ever had one of those, but we did have one of those. You know? And my friend, he has a college degree in anthropology. You study people. And he tells me how much he enjoys going back to Vietnam. He left his leg there. You know, and he wears shorts. I saw him, he came by with another friend, and we have a good Chinese restaurant in town, and they took me to lunch last week. And I thought, I got all excited, oh, we're gonna go out to lunch. And he wears shorts, and you can see that he's missing his leg. It's a plastic leg. And he does pretty good, but no bitterness. The magic is no bitterness. If you're going to be unhappy the rest of your life, you know, and you hear people say, well, I used to be married, but my wife, blah, 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 blah. I used to be married, but my husband, blah, 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 blah. And they talk about all the bad things they did. And they never forgave them. And this is about forgiving, you know? And this is about just moving down the path and going from one place to another and having something to eat when you're hungry and sleeping when you're tired. And when it's time to clean the temple, clean the temple. It's the hardest working monk I've ever known. I can't hardly do anything anymore. And he keeps his temple up. Never complains. And he gets awful tired sometimes, but he never complains. That's magic. That's the magic. And that's what the Buddha said to do. Just do what you need to do. And don't become unhappy because you can't accomplish something. Because you may later, and if you don't, that's okay too. Okay?